All right, for those of you watching live, are we still there? Are we good? I dropped some service here. Shout out to my Ethernet cable. Looks like I'm gaining it back here slowly, and there we go. All right, so we're going to ignore the first 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, joining me as he did in Game 1, and hopefully for the rest of this series, like he said before we recorded, Grayson Hill, hopefully getting three more of these games left. So, first of all, how are you doing at 10:45 Eastern time after this lovely finals game, too?
I have so much more respect for everybody involved with Inside the NBA, having done 1.01 of these. Thankfully, we'll get out of here before 1 a.m., unlike they do. But, yeah, this one was worth staying up for. Much more eventful fourth quarter. The highlight was not an 8-point game. We actually had a possession for the tie at the buzzer. So much more entertaining game throughout. You know, it still has the finals allure, but it's nice to actually get some true finals basketball where you truly don't know who's going to win.
So I'm going to lead with a trivia question that may have come up during the broadcast, and we'll kind of just get into it after that. I know people are going to want to hear about Jamal Murray and, you know, the step back three that probably should have gone in, even with some good defense.
I thought it was good. Yeah.
I thought it was too. I thought we were going to get OT, and this was going to be later. And by the way, to piggyback on the Inside the NBA stuff, it is funny because like I used to laugh at like why they would do the West Coast games, especially in the playoffs. They would do the West Coast tips that were 10:30, which were actually 10:45 on. I think TNT was the broadcast problem, right? Not ABC,
Yeah.
Or no, it was ABC. ABC was the worst, right? They would tip way later, right? Or ESPN's broadcast, and then they would be like, Charles or somebody would throw out a time, and they'd be like,
right,
1:22, and I'd look at my watch and be like, that's 4 minutes from now. Is he thinking we're supposed to like get out of here in 4 minutes? I'm like, there's no way. This is 30 minutes, give or take. I think we went 35 or 37 last time because we talked about Ja.
Yeah.
There's some other NBA stuff that if we have time for at the end, we could sprinkle in. But I want to leave with this. It was said on the broadcast. Sometimes you pay attention, sometimes you don't. Not you, but in general, especially with the likes of Jackson and Van Gundy. I'll get to in a minute. There's a common theme here through these post-game shows. But there is a player in this series, and you can guess until you get it, that is number one in games played in the last decade. So in the last NBA decade, there is a player in this series that is leading in games played. That is total games played. I believe that includes playoffs as well. Yeah, you can look at the roster. It's not going to help or hurt, but I would love for the player, the people at home to play along because this blew my mind. I could not believe this, and I looked it up, and it is true. The last decade, who do you think leads the NBA in games played in this series?
Is it Kevin Love?
That would be my first guess, and the answer is no. Unfortunately,
Does
not.
Udonis Haslem not entering games count?
No, this is games played. This is actually played the game. Yeah, unfortunately, this is actually playing the game.
I thought I was so smart and get it with Kevin Love immediately.
I did. Again, my first thought immediately, even though they said it on the broadcast, and I went, And for those of you watching live right now, Grayson's trying to figure out, there is a guy in this series that is the leader in games played in the last NBA decade.
Is it Jeff Green?
That's a good guess. That's another good guess. So, like, you know who not to guess. You know not to guess, Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin. It's like you're immediately getting rid of half these teams, right? But you're guessing all the guys that I would have guessed first.
This makes it so much more painful. DeAndre Jordan.
That's also a good guess, and the answer is still no, because a decade ago would have been for him, 2023, so 2013, right at the beginning of those Clippers runs. So that's probably a really good guess. Problem is he hasn't played a game in like half a year for Denver, so maybe that's important.
Small problem. Is it Cody Zeller?
That's also a good guess. Drafted in 2013, if I'm correct, or somewhere around that time. I think he might have been 2015, but no. I will give you a hint. You were on the right path with DeAndre Jordan. You were on the right team at least. It's not a Miami Heat, even though they do have a lot of guys that could qualify for this. We are 4 minutes and 45 seconds in, and we still do not have this answer. That is the point of me starting it, because I just wanted to get the juices flowing.
KCP that old?
It is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He has the most games played. And, of course, Jackson or Van Gundy or one of the guys was like, LeBron was quoted as saying, some of the best of, abilities is availability, and that's why he loved KCP so much on the Lakers, was because the guy was at least out there and playing. So I thought that was hilarious to kind of just start out with, really important player in this series and in this game specifically. Unfortunately, that's probably not the most impactful thing after Murray's, 3 and stuff. So that was just to get the juices flowing. There's always some fun like BS last time. I think you asked me last game. It was like who led in a percentage or something, and I was like, "There's no way I'm getting this right" or something. Yeah. So look, it's always fun to get the juices flowing. I think the real thing I want to address up front is I think Kevin Love being the starter offensively, whether it was from a box score standpoint, is irrelevant, but Kevin Love being the out the gate like adjustment from Spoelstra is really, really important. Come to find out, I don't know if this was a joke, but apparently he is his middle name is named after Wes Unseld, who's one of the best outlet passers in the NBA history. I have yet to fact check that. That is from the Gundy and Jackson duo that could say anything at any time, as they did tonight as well. We'll get to that at the end. Little comment they made I'd like to get some thoughts on, but I think his impact as a passer and as a big and obviously the problem I'm having is the rebounds, and we'll talk about like some of the stuff with the paint in a minute with the Heat's rotation, but I just think what he brought gave them such a flow offensively. So that was kind of my first initial reaction, especially right out the gate. Where were you at, especially in the first half?
I mean, it jumped out 10-2, so I think something was done by Miami to really put emphasis on we want to put our fingerprints all over this early start, especially offensively. I think both teams struggled out of the gate last game. But I think specifically for Miami to avoid that 2-0 hole, they knew they're going to have to come out and compete early. Big for Strus to come out and absolutely really propel the run. Honestly, he had 2 threes in that opening kind of flurry. So really good for him to not that he was going to shy away from the shooting role that he's there to fill. But I thought it was really good for Miami to see him have shots fall very, very early. He and Vincent actually combined for all 10 of the early Miami run there. Bam added a couple mid-range as well, just kind of keep things going. And, they're off and running from there. The early Denver turnover issues were very odd, out of character. I know Malone was extremely unhappy. We got some audio in a huddle.
Some very quick edited audio, but yes, we did get audio. Very quickly edited, I'm sure.
Cut the of course we all at home can fill in the blanks, but they can't air it, so I do give them credit for that. You're right.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris OB in the YouTube comments. He said I wouldn't let Cody Zeller on the plane back to Miami. So I hate to pivot, but I do want to pivot to the rim protection for when, and I don't know if that's what he's addressing, but I'm going to address it this way. When Bam's not on the floor, Miami's rim protection is ungodly horrible. Like, it is a level of bad that I just don't think we've seen from a finals caliber defense in a long time.
Yeah.
Again, no real discourse here, but just it's ridiculous.
I agree. It was night and day is an overused cliche type thing, but it was literally, it went from, we can survive, we can be capable in the paint, provide some resistance to Jokic, Gordon, etc. But with Adebayo looking on, it was tough. But yet they survive and steal one. So now, is that sustainable? Probably not. But they got away with it, to put it lightly, tonight. But they've got to figure something out. It can't be Bam or bust in the paint defensively.
Look, it's Bam or bust for a lot of different reasons for Miami, and obviously tonight was an important reason of it can't always be that way because, they're getting a big showing from Strus, a big showing from Vincent, or I say big showing, at least they made shots, right? Like, at least they were consistent.
Strus had a goose egg in game 1, so,
And Vincent didn't have 23. Vincent didn't have 23 in the first game, but he didn't, he didn't have a bad offensive showing, right? There was a couple of points made on the broadcast about, at least Gabe Vincent has been a consistent piece for them and shooting efficiently too. I believe we mentioned he shot 50% from the field last game. He shot 8 for 12, 4 for 6 from 3, 3 for 3 from the line, plus 22 again in a vacuum, but still really, really important for him. I do want to point out the point with Butler for me that has really changed. And I know 5 for 5 from the free throw line isn't exactly like a stellar, free throw outing, but you mentioned game 1.
They shot as a team last time, so
right. As an eye-opening factor in game 1, I think that was probably the reason they lose the game. Which honestly, I think they get to the line in game 1. Maybe we're looking at a 2-0 series in Miami's favor. Denver was up 24 at one point. I think taking advantage of the lack of free throws probably mattered. But I think even Butler getting 5 felt like a lot because it opens up Miami's offense. It gets them where they're less reliant on these kick out passes. You're less reliant on Kyle Lowry playing 24 minutes and being your primary playmaker when he's on the floor, that kind of thing. So it creates this funnel for Miami essentially, and that was kind of something that also I took away, especially in the first half. Like I said, I have a lot of first half notes. Second half got really good where I didn't want to like take notes back and forth the whole time.
I was
like,
the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to watch. This is great. And then we know how the finish ends. So, and we'll get to that in a second. But anything else from Miami that kind of stuck out to you? I know there's a couple things we saw a different game from Jokic today, and there's a whole different conversation there to be had. But
right. I mean, really, to touch on the free throws one more time, the other thing about free throws is it's a lot harder to get overwhelmed from a run perspective if you're getting points with the clock stopped. It gives you time to catch your breath, set some things up, talk things over on the side, things like that, to where you're not, oh my God, we were down 3 and now it's 16 points. And we're having to – they shot like 62s and shot 2 free throws, which is probably – happened in like 14 NBA games all time. Just one of those statistical things that jumps out, and you can let it beat you twice or 3 times, but they really responded tonight. And the physicality was there early, especially that opening kind of salvo that we saw offensively. I think 20 to 22 from the free throw line for them tonight. You mentioned the 5 from Jimmy. So I think that if that's the baseline going forward, I think Miami has a really good chance in this series, despite the nightmare we saw in game 1, at least from that small part of the game.
I guess I'll ask it this way, because I think I've mentioned to you many times, both on and off of live or recording, that I do think coaching adjustments can get overblown. I mentioned Kevin Love as kind of the eye-opening coaching adjustment. But you mentioned, too, the free throw. It's a great point. The free throw thing, like when you're taking those free throws, the point guard's coming over and talking, right? Or if Bam's at the free throw line 5 times, Butler's probably not boxing out. Butler's probably at the top talking to Spo, right, if it's on that side of the court. So there's a lot of really important small things that I think Spoelstra does so well. And, just almost it matters to just have that kind of basketball mind sometimes to be able to know when to make those adjustments. And I think that free throw time is super important. And maybe I'm just overthinking this. Maybe it's just a little tiny detail. But that's just the kind of thing that I feel like Spoelstra brings to the table in a series where, like I said, I'm not discrediting Malone in any way. I don't want Nuggets fans to hear this right now or later and just attack us for it or attack me for it. But,
right.
if you want to attack me for it, it's at Grayson_Hill. But at the end of the day, like, Spoelstra knows when to make those changes and when make those adjustments. I'm not necessarily saying a free throw is going to matter and doing it in between those sets, but every little minute counts with your team, and I think that right now is a big reason for it.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So for Denver, the first thing just right out the gate, from an adjustment standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, Miami in the first game, I feel like they tried to stop him. And yet, dropped to whatever it was, 30-something, 20-something, triple-double.
Triple-double, right, yeah.
They do – I don't feel like they necessarily were like, hey, you beat us and let's see what happens kind of thing. But I think they tried their absolute damnedest to take away the playmaking. And, 4 assists, that speaks for itself.
I was just about to say, yeah.
But the other thing, too, he didn't score till the final 3 seconds of the first quarter in Game 1.
Yeah,
he had 11,
first shot attempt.
He had 11 in the first quarter today. And then obviously we saw the stat line you see on the bottom of the screen, 41, 11, and 4. Right. That's the kind of stat line. That's the kind of stat line you're not going to win if you're Denver if that's his stat line, and people are going to think that sounds crazy.
4, especially like you said pre-show. Yeah,
it just changes everything. Like it changes completely everything, and I think that was one of the biggest things. Denver's going to have to figure out a way that they can utilize him. I do think there's ways that and I'll get into it in a second. I do think there's ways that they can utilize him. But what were your, whether it's Jokic related or not, that was kind of my out the gate, like first thing I noticed immediately.
Yeah, when the best player on the floor goes from 6 first quarter assists to 4 assists in an entire game, you're going to have issues. When you add that to the even free throw line statistic, you can look at Denver's turnovers. There's things kind of singularly not big issues, but when you combine them all and then you get an actual lively Miami team down the stretch in a game they're actually engaged in, because that's truly winnable. They're not down 24 points, down as many as 15, I think. That was very, very brief, even when they were. And really, you look at the final score, you think, wow, Miami really just snatched one right away from Denver. It was almost the exact opposite, because Miami was up double digits. Frantic 12-2, 14-2 in that neighborhood run from Denver the final 2 or 3 minutes to close. By now, we're not spoiling it. Jamal Murray had a good Jamal Murray shot to tie the game, and again, off his hands. I was like 3 seconds ahead of Trevor watching the end of this, so I just had my hands over my mouth trying to give everything away, and off his hands, like, oh my god, we're playing 5 more minutes. But
Yeah, y'all are getting this
rims
podcast
out.
start time right now instead of halfway through it right now.
Right.
So big
Yeah.
difference.
Derek White is not walking through that door. Nothing off the rim for Denver. And, he was sit even. But I think, I think if Jokic gets, I believe, 11 assists in game one, if 11 is the ceiling and 4 is the floor, I think if he sits in 7, 8, 9-ish, they're still going to be in every game. But I think what he brings to the table for their offense and what he's able to open up with the attention he draws when he gets the ball below the free throw line just didn't seem like the playmaking is the same as the first game, but it just was not. The plays didn't translate the same way to the first game. And whether that's Spo or that's something else, or, maybe shots just weren't falling tonight for them, I don't know what the potential assists were. But it's just, as much as Miami can't allow 11, Denver can't have 4. I think that if you had shown me the 4 assists from Jokic, I said, wow, that's pushing it. And that's exactly what happened tonight. So I can't say I'm surprised by the overall result, even looking at that one statistic, because that's just how important it is. Because again, he's the best player on the court.
It is really funny too, because like you mentioned, like just seeing those assists, I can tell you right now, obviously cheating. I have one of them written down, and I'm going to talk about it now. But I can tell you 2 of the 4 right now off the top of my head from watching that game, and I don't have a photographic memory by any means. Y'all should see my notes when I do these podcasts, both live and not live. But one of them was, and it's a play that even the best defensive Heat team that we've seen in a while can't even stop. It's the Murray-Jokic 2-man that we've all know and love, right? Murray top of the key, Jokic free throw line area, takes the pass, doesn't, and he is the opposite of most guys where they have to think at the top, right? Most bigs aren't for pass first guys. It is what it is, right? So he doesn't think, and he immediately is either passing to a cutter or passing to a shooter. It was their last offensive possession in the half, and Gordon gets a wide open dunk. Backcourt, like just completely. Yep. I think they might have been in a little bit of a small zone there, but regardless, like that's one of the 4 assists. Like that's the kind of play that they can beat them on every time. Not every time, at least can make them work, right? There's shooters there for Denver that are respected. And the other one was that ridiculous touch pass. I mean, literally the ball wasn't in his hand for it had to have been in his hand less than a couple milliseconds. Like it was ridiculous. Touches it, tops fingers, forward ball in the hand. Same thing. Defensive, the defensive breakdown, whether you want to call it that or not, like pass to a cutter, pass to a shooter, like those are the kinds of things that he can be. And it kind of leads me into my last. I don't know if I want to go down one Jokic rabbit hole or if I want to just ask you the right thing here, but like we've seen 2 games, right? We've seen 2 adjustments. Right. We've seen 2 different styles of going at a star player or doing, and I really think like Butler's had a good series, but he hasn't had a Butler game yet.
No, absolutely not.
Which, if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, you should be scared. Period.
As a guy who 38 points through 2 games, a Butler game, he's getting north of that. If I had to give any consolation to a Denver fan as a guy who had to have his team go up against Jimmy Butler in an NBA Finals, it is all too familiar what game, what was it, game 4 or game 5 did, to my mental health. But whatever the one they won to turn the series mid there. I think it was 4.
I think it was 2. I'm honestly trying to push it out of my memory while it's still possible. But it is something that I think now that we know, and of course, again, you can take you have your own opinions as a basketball evaluator, what you think about going back to a home, because I think sometimes the home away thing is such a big deal. I know the 5,400 square,
right,
5,400 feet in the air, right? The Denver environment, whatever. So taking that consideration, what's something that's either got to adjust or got to change? Like, what's the X factor that's got to matter for Game 3 to make this? Because we can't be tied after Game 3, so something's got to happen for either team.
It's just going to be interesting to me to see how Denver responds to the pair on the road, because against Phoenix they dropped both, and against the Lakers they won both. Wow, yeah. So we've seen both extremes from this team, which it's like I'm talking about the Celtics now. But I think that Malone's going to really have to drill into these guys. You do not want to be down 2-1 on the road to Miami Heat. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many series have ended up like that. It has not gone well because the Miami Heat are the last team in the East standing. So I can at least say that from memory. But I think that, God forbid Jimmy Butler goes for 42, 7, and 3 in Game 3, because I really don't know that Denver can actually win the Jimmy Butler game. they're going to need more from guys like Michael Porter Jr. if they want a prayer withstanding that, especially when you consider it's going across the country down to Miami. But I just think, it's easy to say, but the runs, you've got to find a way to break it up. And these are two teams that have shown an absolute propensity to dominate an opponent for a couple of minutes here. And we saw it about 3 or 4 times from each team tonight. But I just think that, especially on the road, as we saw in game 1, games can get out of hand very quick. The stage being the finals does not mean we're guaranteed to finish like tonight. We had an absolute clunker in game 1, and we could absolutely see one the other way in Miami's favor one of these next 2 games. So I think that just making sure that they are felt like fully aware that, that we're not in Denver anymore, no elevation, all that's aside, whatever effect you want to believe it has, it's, they cannot lose, first of all, both, obviously. But if they go back to Denver 2-2, it's not the end of the world. But I think that if they want to avoid a Phoenix situation, they're just going to really have to limit the amount of times that they're getting 3 points and Miami's getting like 10 or 15, because Phoenix did the same thing to them at home. So I think just keeping the game in front of them, not having to be played from behind like did early tonight. Obviously, they came right back and answered, which I thought was big, at least in the first half. But they can't wait to flip that switch like they did tonight. It was just, if that game went on 2 more minutes, I think Denver wins the game. But they ultimately just ran out of time. But that 4-minute mark, they were like, all right, let's go beat them now. And it's like, well, it's a 12-point game or whatever it was. So, and Miami's too good of a team to just decide you want to beat them, I think, too.
They showed some weakness, though. Like that run, I don't know if I want to be like, who gave up, is it Miami giving up the run or is it Denver creating the run? I know that sounds dumb, but I don't know. I really don't know what to think about it. I think something that's going to be really important, I think you said it, and I'll kind of piggyback on it a little bit. You said the word runs, and I kind of land the plane for me with what's going to be really important to the same thing I keep harping back on for Miami is that, this is not a negative connotation by any constellation whatsoever, but Denver's team is better. Denver's team is more talented. It is that. Yes. That is what it is.
That's not new territory for Miami either. So,
but the biggest thing that matters right now, and we've seen it in game 1, even with a loss in game 2, like role players play better at home. Even young ones like Christian Brown and Bruce Brown and some others, right? Yes. Miami's role players play way better at home. Like we saw it
Duncan
in
Robinson.
The series.
You were scared after tonight. Just wait.
Yeah. So Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, all these guys that have just been all over the board. Gabe Vincent, got to give him his credit. I'm going to ask you a question that kind of spurred my point. Give me a percentage that you think the amount of points that Miami's undrafted players have scored in this playoff run through before tonight's game.
So postseason in its entirety.
Yeah. Percentage of points that Miami's undrafted guys, that included, all the way down to Udonis Haslem, who I don't think has played a minute, but they just showed the graphic with the 8 guys, and I said, oh, cool. Did not realize it was 8. That is still a ridiculous number in and of itself.
I would say it's got to be 35, 40% at least.
If you're good with 40, it's 44% of Miami's points in this playoffs have come from Gabe Vincent.
If Max 50, I need to start watching these graphics more. Yeah,
yeah. And look, they're good stuff because that's a tidbit that I think will age really, really interestingly. If they win this finals, like that's not going to be forgotten. Like I want to be. It shouldn't be. I want to be in that camp that I want people to understand when I bring up the undrafted thing. I am just saying it from a context of what they are. Right. I am not saying that they are. There's nothing wrong with undrafted guys. I just finished my big board this evening, kind of into the game, unfortunately. But, there are some undrafted guys that I'm really excited about. Why I can't put them in the 60s and 50s, it's a different story, right? But those guys are going to matter, and there's going to be an undrafted guy every draft that's going to be important, right? 44% of your team's points, though. Like, again, I think that may come back eventually where I think the talent disparity is there. I do think that Denver's still more talented, and if those Miami runs can't be controlled, Denver's in trouble because this is game 2 or game 3 and game 4 in Miami with that ability to, just be able to flip a switch like that. And Gabe Vincent, Max Strus made the first 3 or 4 shots. They were all threes. Like immediately Miami
2 for
got
2
out
in
the gate.
90 seconds. Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. If this is going to be how this game's going to be, this game's over, right? And obviously we know that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But that's my initial thought, and those runs are really, really important. I have a question about a comment that Jackson and Van Gundy made. I hope we can do one of these shows without it being brought up. That's something they say. I'm not getting my hopes up anytime soon.
Last game on mute. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we, I've likened him to, and he had the times tonight where he went coast to coast, like looked like Magic Johnson. Like it didn't, like that's not a far-fetched thing to say that coast to coast play where it was like offhand, getting beat on the side that he normally can come crossover with. Like it didn't look like a normal human being thing for a center. But one of the non-Mike Breen characters made a comment that basically said that Jokic is a top 10 center, all time. So I know I voted for him, and we're not going to get into the tier here because we're 25 minutes in, and I do have a couple. We got a couple more things, but I don't know. Is it disrespectful to say top 10, or should we just are they just saying that just to be safe because it's probably still a conversation that he's top 5?
I mean, I get in full context their job is to entertain people, and they say things like that for the exact reason that they are repeated and aggregated just in the same manner. To me, it's almost unfair to Jokic because we forget, and he's not, 20 years old, but he's young in the grand scheme of the NBA and how well guys play further in their careers now, thanks to sports science, a bunch of other things. So I think just because of how much belief I have in him to continue this, I think it's a bit, I don't know if premature is the right word because it's almost like he's undeserving of it, which he's not. I mean, just to hear Shaquille O'Neal talk about him, find me another guy who gets talked about in that manner from him who is in a top anything you want to say center of all time. So I think, keeping his opinion in mind, I think, again, what we're seeing is really, really special, especially from a guy at his position, what he's able to do with the ball. So for me, you could absolutely talk me into it. You might not even need to. But again, I just think that, as he sits still 12 quarters away from his first title, I think that he has so much more room to grow as a player, legacy-wise, player-wise, achievement-wise, things like that, to where I almost don't want to put that on his shoulders before we have to. Because, we've seen some promising careers start in ways and then, it just doesn't sustain. And there's that one guy on your team that kind of ruins expectations for everybody. So especially at a young age, progressing through careers and expecting, the great times to stay great for a very, very long time, when in reality, it's very, very rare. So when all is said and done, I think, I think he's quickly approaching that point, if not there already. And people may in the moment react to a night like tonight where he dropped a home game in the finals and think, well, that moves him down 3 spots. That just makes no sense. I think he is absolutely in that territory. And like I said, for me, having been watching basketball for a lot less time than a lot of people that commentate on it, just because, I'm 25. So that disqualifies me from a lot of great players, centers included. So
I don't feel warranted comparing, Wes Unseld's outlet pass to Kevin Love. I feel like Jackson's right in that regard to make those comments.
Yeah.
But I know what he means.
Guys like that, yeah. So to summarize, I think yes, but let's be careful because we can ruin how special this is with projecting out expectations and things like that, and you kind of forget to stop and watch the kid just play absolutely out of his mind.
Yeah, I won't go on any further because we completely agree. Like it's a fun conversation that needs to be had, and I know some people are like I'm not having those conversations till they're retired. Like I'm not in that. Like we're having conversations about Tim Duncan.
Patient, yeah.
I mean, we were having conversations about Tim Duncan after the 3rd title. Like I mean, it's stuff like that that you just have to think about, and you know how I feel about him. So again, I would be wasting my breath talking about it. So, pretty fun, pretty fitting to bring this up at the very end before I ask you one thing before we get out of here.
Sure.
Since they're again, Ja Morant news is still looming, hypothetically. And then, some other NBA stuff like coaches. I think Frank Vogel was hired, and since we did this last, couple other things. Nothing really like game-breaking, I guess.
Sure.
The Chipotle burrito money count. We are up to in 29 minutes. We are up to, first of all, before I give the total, in game 1, 56,700 for those that are confused or will be watching this later and be confused. I thought it was hilarious that they did this, and I am also bringing this up because the challenge is still out there. If you can send a tweet to either of us, and I'll change it back where you can see the tweets on the screen. If either of us tweet at us at 2 pointers, whatever, if you can send us a screenshot of a text that confirms your code that I can tell is legit from Chipotle, that you got the actual 300 3-pointer, that they gave away 300 burritos per 3-pointer, if you actually can prove that, I will send you a $10 Chipotle gift card in your email. $56,700 in game one. I calculated the math very simply as it was for 300 burritos for every 3-pointer in game one, and then I did it at the average chicken bowl that it cost me in North Carolina for a Chipotle bowl, so $9 is what I rounded it to. 56,700, and we mentioned in game one that this number might go up exponentially. And I don't think it went up exponentially, but it went up more than we thought.
It went up. Yeah.
$75,600 was given away in burritos in game two. Again, I still have no physical proof that anyone got them in the Twitter replies or in my Twitter replies. So please, again, $10 challenge out there. We are up to, in the series, at $132,300 in free Chipotle burritos. The question I have is, does the number, we're betting men here, over under 500,000 we hit?
I want to see it hit like 600. I want just like an absolute, just complete chuck fest in one of these games. And we're talking about, well, tonight it was like $175,000, and some intern
it's possible.
is now out of a job.
Yep.
I just want to, whatever it is, I hope they keep doing it. We just keep progressing until we get the Warriors back in the finals or something like that. And they just completely refuse to. But I think that is a very, very fun angle to keep track of. And to keep that counter going as we do these. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take the over just because, life's too short to bet the under.
I love it. I want it to be over too. I think we're, far-fetched to think that we could get potentially, if it goes 5, which would be a far-fetched thing to think potentially, but if it goes 5, it might be close, but I think 500,000 is safe. I think it'll go over probably.
Yeah.
For those that are watching live, which I believe I'll be able to cut this out on YouTube, but 0 right now. But at the 32-minute mark, I do want to ask you, because time for the draft is running out, and this is completely off the cusp, and good luck. I will not be doing another draft chat probably, so this is the final time I'll be able to talk about draft between now and June 22nd, unless I throw something together right before the draft. But who do you want, assuming, again, anything can happen, right? Like Scoot Henderson might be traded 42 times at pick 3 before we know what actually happens. So let's just be real. Assuming everything stays the same, which I know with a grain of salt sounds stupid, but assuming everything stays the same, who do you want at 12? 12, right? I got that right? Yeah.
Yes, 12.
God, 12. This has been a long year. 12. And then who do you think actually gets taken? Because if there's anybody that can try to figure out Sam Presti, it's a Thunder fan who's had to deal with him for over a decade. So who do you want, first of all, which is like, we've talked about it in hypothetical sense multiple times, but this is the first time I'm actually asking. So who do you want at 12, and who do you think will actually be taken if they don't trade the pick, which I think happens?
Well, first off, as a Thunder fan, I still get it wrong every single year. I have yet to successfully project what Sam Presti will do, mostly because I can't even get right what pick we end up taking. So
fair point.
I had 2 shots at it. Oh, I guess Chet was an easy one last year. I didn't really count, though. That's a 2. Ousmane Dieng was not on my draft night bingo card, but I'm very glad we have him. Jalen Williams as well. So that was back-to-back picks. One of
Dieng crossed my mind. Dieng crossed my mind, but I didn't take the stab at it because I knew that somebody like New York or somebody was going to get weird. Funny enough, who ended up taking him, obviously, on your behalf. But yeah. Dieng I knew was probably going to be in that window, but I didn't. Mm-hmm. Didn't that pick get traded like 6 times at one point? Like it was like we couldn't figure out who it was. It was Charlotte. Right. It was New York. It was Denver. It was Detroit. And I'm like, I'm confused. Dieng obviously makes sense now looking back on it. But all right, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the dream pick is Taylor Hendricks, but if we stay at 12, that's not going to happen. I knew you were going to stood on a soapbox and prayed for Evan Mobley for weeks, and we didn't. That was a lot tougher to trade up for. But we ended up okay that time because Sam Presti again knows more than me, and I'm bad at guessing what he's going to do. So I almost don't want to say it that I think we're going to trade up and try and get him, because that means this won't happen. So I've got to think of alternative theories, just because if I want to be wrong, that's only going to get Hendricks. But I'm a big believer in promises, and promises have been made this time of year, and I think that Bilal is a guy that if people are projecting promises correctly, the Thunder may have spoken to him in a very serious manner about taking him at 12. And I think if he does fall there, that I would be very, very happy to come away with him on draft night. So, again, I almost hesitate to say these things that I actually want to have happen because I'm so very, very bad at projecting them, especially with the Thunder. But I'm talking myself into it as I try and really decide for myself what I believe of the promise rumors and is it truly Presti and things like that. So I think either of those two guys I'm ecstatic about. I off the top of my head I don't know where you have guys like Lively, other big options in that sort of range. But we've got a whole lot of ammo for first next year. I'm going to assume are not going to use ourselves. So but it's truly up to Presti. He's the ultimate trigger man, and when he wants to pull the trigger, he has the assets to go get anyone outside of the top 2 or 3 in really any given draft. This one, one is truly untouchable, obviously, but Charlotte is Charlotte. Sorry, Josh, but I think that I'm going to prepare for just absolute anarchy from the Thunder war room. But I would love Hendricks. I would also enjoy Bilal. But I think that, if we do, I hesitate to say boring because that doesn't describe anything the Thunder do, honestly. But, guys like Lively that aren't as super hyped, aren't as associated with the Thunder, which honestly makes it more likely we might take a stab with them. But I think we'd be best to come away from the draft with size. I know we've got, 6'8" guards and things like that. But Chet's going to need a running back down low. And I love JRE and, Dario Saric tried it, but I think we need another young piece alongside Chet to solidify the paint for us so we're not in NBA Finals in 2 years like Miami.
So I had a feeling that those were both the answers coming, so I was prepared to at least ask a follow-up or at least discuss it. So to answer your question about Lively, trying to figure out the best way to reveal this because my board is essentially set and it goes out as soon as I can finish all the work that goes into putting it up. It's not fun. I'll give you an answer this way. Talking about like where I had Lively. I agree. I think Lively is a great target. I think that's who they should go get. I think another name they should probably have fun with before I tell you the Lively thing that I think is interesting for my board specifically, but who I have in a similar place is I think Leonard Miller, which if they aren't the Bilal Promise team,
right.
I think 12 might be rich. I think they might trade back 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 spots and play around with the odds. Then again, when have we ever seen him do that? And then
You've seen him lean towards rich. Giddey comes to mind as the most recent example of that, where you're like, Giddey at 6, but then it's like, well, Golden State at 7 was thinking about it. So you're really, you're playing with fire.
He would rather. I would be more shocked if they took. I would be more shocked if they didn't take Miller at 12. Then traded back and then tried to get him 5 spots later. You have the assets, take the guy, right? If you like him there. To answer the question about Lively, I do my positional values because it's hard to do that stuff now. But it's like I have guard, wing, forward, and big. Pretty simple, right? And if they're on the tier, I probably lean wing. If they're taller, I probably lean forward, even though they're probably a wing. That doesn't really answer anything other than Victor's a big, and then 24 spots later is the next big. Every single positional ticker on my thing is guard, forward, wing, wing, forward. It just, at one point, there's 6 wings in a row. So that is kind of the unfortunate part. And then after that, it's 9 more spots before you even get to another big, right?
Right.
So just thinking about that, like there's value. I think there's a lot of guys that you could go get. I would have loved a Deron Holmes. Obviously, I don't want to speak hypothetical here for guys that aren't even in the draft, but all things considered, I'll end with this with you because we're going to almost 40 now. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they brought up the exact Bilal thing. They texted me, and they said, where do you actually think he goes? And, again, I'm a guy all year that, for context, did not rank him out of stubbornness, thought he was next year guy, top probably 5 or 10 next year. He's probably going in the top 20 without a doubt. At this point, it's happening. It's just a matter of where. So let's just say he does have a lottery promise, right? Let's use our brain for a second. Collectively, right? San Antonio, not happening. Charlotte, not happening. Portland, not happening. Houston, not happening. Detroit, maybe, but not happening. Orlando, maybe, but not happening. Indiana,
maybe with 11.
Yeah. Indiana, not happening. Washington, not happening. I'll start thinking around Utah, but probably not happening. Let's just say for the sake of this example. Yeah. So that's the only one I might sniff the possibility. Dallas, absolutely not happening, right? So let's just assume the top 10. If let's throw Utah out the window. There's a guy that's on the board that they absolutely love more. Let's just say for the hypothetical that they do take somebody else. Then you look at if everybody and their mother that you trust is telling you that he has a promise in the lottery. Let's put our brains together for a second. Orlando at 11, you guys at 12, Toronto at 13, and New Orleans at 14. Okay?
Right.
He's on the board for one of those three teams, assuming Orlando's out the window. People go, well, if it's not 14 and it's not 11, someone has told me verbatim, they don't think it's 14, they don't think it's 11. And I go, okay, great. What does that mean? I go, let's use our brains for a second. What does that leave you? 12 and 13.
That's two. Yeah.
Who are the two people that would make a promise for a guy like that?
Yeah.
The Thunder and the Raptors. So literally it makes no sense not to sit here and think that is not what's going to happen. I 1,000% think it's one of those two teams. And I'd be lying if I said that I'm not going to go try to find out between now and June 22nd. I'm going to go try my damnedest to figure it out. But guess what? It's okay because I honestly would not be shocked if Utah did it. That's it. I mean, I think Bilal could go 9 to Utah. So that's where it kind of throws the whole wrench in the thing. Somebody made this convincing case about it's basically 12 or 13. Then I'm in the back of my head, I'm like, Utah could literally pick anybody that's draft eligible, and I wouldn't be surprised.
It's Denny Ainge. You don't know.
Well, that was what I wanted to end with. Thank you for whoever's watching currently live, as well as those of you that watched earlier live. If you're watching this on YouTube in the future, plug away as you're parting. Let me not put the SeatGeek ad on the screen. That would be a really awkward plug. Twitter was obviously on the screen previously. It'll come up in a second. Subscribe to the 1009 podcast below. But plug away, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I do a podcast about just general sports with some old college roommates. We all got together today in Clemson to watch the baseball team lose. That was really fun. Baseball aside, good to see Bailey and Jacob. But yeah, we posting weekly. Clemson biased. We try and stick to big storylines, whatever sports in season. I watch more NBA in a week than they do all year. So I love them both dearly, but I am very, very appreciative when Trevor gives me an outlet to talk some ball on here. So it's been really nice to get my thoughts out on NBA games because I'll text them and they just do not care, which is perfectly fine. So, yeah, big college football fans, NFL football, NHL, you're not going to hear much of, but, it's college baseball regional season. Super regionals coming up. We'll have some of that up soon. And, it's dog days of summer. We're all big baseball fans as well. So we'll get more into that as the summer months kind of get overtaken by baseball and then not really much else going on as we get out of June. But yeah, so good time passer, commute, minute eater type deal on Twitter at the 1009. We're on Apple and Spotify and hopefully back on YouTube pretty soon. But yeah, that's about it. And again, appreciate it, Trevor. And hopefully we'll get 5 more of these, maybe.
Yeah, I would love that. And shout out to the NBA for not. Did we agree it didn't end up on Father's Day, or it did? It was Father's Day night. Like it was obviously going to be after.
I think it was,
everyone's back from dinner at that point, right? My dad, God bless him, is not even in. He's not even going to be in the state of North Carolina, so I'm good to do whatever. So, but yeah, hopefully we get 5 more of these. I would absolutely love that, and they're supposed to go 30, and that's what's fun about doing these. I'd love to go even more, but it is getting late. So, again, subscribe to everything for Grayson down below. There'll be plenty to talk about here in the next couple of months on this channel, at least, with the draft and free agency, and Trivia Showdown will be making its return. I don't have an idea or plan of how you're going to be involved, but we're going to figure something out. It may be a bring Josh back and let's have some fun. Haven't figured something out. I know I'm sure he would absolutely love that. By the way, shout out to Josh for coming back on. I never addressed it, but that video did pretty nuclear numbers. So thank you, Josh, for that. Thank you for the 2 or 3 people hanging out here at the very end of the stream. We are getting out of here, so appreciate the live viewership. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter live, follow, like, comment, subscribe, everything that you see there on the screen. Don't forget SeatGeek, code 2 pointers. You're able to get $20 off your first purchase. Going to these baseball games that you mentioned earlier, right? A lot of these tickets are pretty cheap anyway, so really great way to earn some extra cash back there. $20 off concert stuff throughout the summer. my final big board will be out hopefully here in the next couple of days. Be on the lookout on Twitter for that announcement coming up. Otherwise, just stuff's going to keep coming out. These are going to be out every single night. Hopefully, like you said, 5 more. I'm trying to drag it on because there are 3 people hanging out live. We thank you. We appreciate you. Live typically within 5 to 10 minutes after the game concludes in the future. So hang out then if you can next time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett on behalf of Grayson. We'll see you later.